Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, hosting a conversation with a business communication expert. Today, delighted to have a conversation with Dawn Echols. Dawn is a clinically trained, licensed mental health professional who works with both individual adults and couples about problems of living. Her specialties include anxiety management and personal growth goals, as well as mental health issues. Dawn is the owner and executive director of Dawning Phoenix, a small private based practice based in Gainesville, Georgia. Her practice offers in person and online counseling options. Dawn has been a guest on the Biz Communication Show several times. We're happy to have her with us again. So, Dawn, welcome to the Biz Communication Show.
Good afternoon, Bill. It's great to be back.
Don, we, of course, in the world, not just here in our hometown of Gainesville, Georgia, we in the world have gone through 14 or 15 or 16 months of what I call the Twilight Zone. It's really almost a fantasy world. Nobody could have written the script, wouldn't want to write a script like this. And one of the main changes that you and I have seen in business communication is that we're not communicating with our customers, our clients, and our prospective customers and clients, or our employees, or our supervisors in a brick and mortar workplace. We're doing that from home instead. And I would imagine, as a professional counselor, you have had to help people with making those adjustments. I was reminded of a quip I heard a while back about when a man retired and his wife said to him after a few weeks, "I married you for better or worse, but not for lunch." and,
Right.
and so we've got so much time together with our mates, with our children, with our parents. Tell me, please, what adjustments you have helped your clients with along those lines and how you've done that.
Well, one of the things that really, if people are both working from home and learning from home, studying from home, trying to exercise at home, doing everything from home, one of the best things that they can do is boundaries. And this applies in therapy across the line in many other ways in our lives. But boundaries by setting limits around what we do. So if we're talking about business communication, Bill, we want to have a boundary area for our work and boundary around our time as much as possible and as practical as possible for what that means. And so if our physical space, that's different for each person. Some people may set up a space in a basement if they have that option. But if they don't have that option, they may have to use precious little space if they have a bustling and family that's coming, a home that's full and happy and bubbling and busy all the time. And now they're all in a space that maybe they feel they're busting out of, in a sense. Then they may have to use a kitchen corner. And you may have to set up a desk. I saw a great advertisement the other day for this collapsible desk. And it's really a smart invention. If it might have been around before, but now it's maybe in a little more demand. If you can set something up, and even like the screen behind me, if you can put screens around it, or do anything that can help create a sense of space that is your workspace, and then create time and schedule blocks that say, this is my learning time, this is my work time, and then turn that stuff off and have time that's concretely defined. The problem with a lot of our world and the way we communicate is that everything bleeds over and we don't have those defined places that we can turn off. There's been a lot of talk long before the pandemic of unplugging and having downshift time. And that's very important now, getting outside, even if it's just a walk around the block, walk around our yard. I have another colleague of mine that when he's doing a lot of work from his computer, he sets a timer. He won't even use his smart devices for it. He uses an old-fashioned egg timer, and he sits it on his desk, and every 15 minutes when he's doing a really intense amount of things, he has that thing go off, and he says he does the pace around the fence of his yard, just even if it's just one lap with his dog or something like that. And then he sits back down. And if he's involved in something that's a workflow, or if he's in sessions, video sessions and things like that, he may not be able to do them that often. But he said, you go 45 minutes. And then he sets that timer at whatever pace he's supposed to be doing. And he takes that pace around the yard so that he makes himself move. And he makes himself set a timer so that he's not counting on himself to keep up with that. So that's one way. That's an answer to your question about how we communicate with one another, is having boundaries that says, this is when I communicate and this is when I don't. This is where I communicate, and I don't want to do it over there. I don't want to be doing it while I'm trying to stir pasta. I don't want to be doing it while I'm trying to help my children learn. I don't want to be doing it from my front porch or my backyard. I want to be doing it when I'm in this space.
That's all great advice. And I'd like to bounce off of that and say, for example, I work many hours per week at the computer, and I do exactly what you're talking about. And I did this before COVID. If you sit at the computer for extended periods of time, an hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, it's bad on you physically, it's bad on you emotionally, it's bad on your productivity. You need those breaks. And then I really like what you say about setting boundaries of space and time. Really, I think you probably ran across this problem even before COVID, because there are people, and especially now that we have email and text, there are people who have supervisors who feel that they can send a message at 10 o'clock at night by text or by email, and it should be answered then.
That's right.
So, your clients, even before COVID, but especially now, need to be able, I mean, we can shut off notifications at night, and we should take advantage of being able to do that. There's also a lot of discipline involved in being able to do what you have advised so well. For example, if you're working at home, there are all kinds of distractions you could have, legitimate distractions, such as, well, it's time to put clothes in the dryer, or time to empty the dishwasher, or go put letters in the mailbox, or whatever. Those things are important. But in getting back to what you said about boundaries, have those after 5 p.m. or do those after 6 p.m. But I really like the example you gave of the man who would set a timer, because we lose track of time when we're lost in projects. That's all very good advice. Have you found that when we got into this and we went several months into it, and you had advised a number of people that they were able, well, we talked about pivoting, that's been the big word. Have you found people able to make two types of adjustments working from home? One, the emotional adjustment, and secondly, the productivity adjustment. Because through your counseling, have you found that working for people?
I've heard it both ways. You hear, and what's been great is for employers who've actually been able to respond both ways, which is not always doable. But when it is, I've heard a couple of really good different stories. I've had employers tell me that they've had employees say, I need to come back to work. What can we do so I can be there? I need to be able to interact with my coworkers. I'm really missing it. There's others whose productivity shot way up when they were working from home, and employers have said, you know what, this is working. And as long as productivity is good and our employees are happy, we're going to keep this model. And they've set they've actually, like you talked about, pivot, set standards that said, if our employees are satisfied and our productivity is being met. And so some have gone to almost like a modified, where I'm hearing employees tell me that are clients say, I'm going to work 2, maybe 3 days a week. I'm working from home 2 or 3 days a week. And some of my clients are actually doing really great jobs with their own boundaries, because they're saying, hey, this is how long I work and I'm going to stop. This is enough. This is a full work day. And fortunately, they're great employees, and they've got, hopefully lately I've heard more good stories than bad, which is great. where they're not being beaten up about turning off and saying, I don't work after 6, 7, or 8 o'clock at night. Usually I'm not hearing later than 7 lately, which is good. More than a year ago, sometimes you hear where people felt pressured. They couldn't turn their phones off after 7, and that's a problem. If people are showing up at work at 7 a.m., they need to be able to not answer a supervisor after 7 p.m. if they're in a salaried job. And I was reading a great article the other day where they said there's some stuff about the 6-hour workday and whether or not that's productive, that can be more productive than an 8-hour workday. And I think when we're in flow, which made me think about that balance of an egg timer, that flow, if we're in flow, we can be really productive, and that in longer than 45 minutes is fine. When I was working on my thesis, I could work for 3 hours and pore over data, and that's okay to do sometimes. It's just not okay to do all the time, every day, in front of blue lights in front of a computer. But so sorry, I kind of got carried away. They're excited about those subjects, but this idea of being able to kind of compartmentalize and to have employers that are understanding that and being able to respond to both needs, either whether they're working from home or coming back, and creating environments that allow that meet the productivity standards and allow employees to thrive, as well as the company's profit lines to thrive as well. That's what you want to see.
I certainly can understand why there are a number of people who have shifted from a physical workplace to working from home. I can definitely understand why many of them say they are more productive. We talked about a minute ago about distractions at home, housework that you think you might do, or maybe a neighbor drops by to chat, or those kinds of things. But think of the distractions that we once had that we don't have at home, such as meetings, such as people dropping by and wanting a 15 to 30-minute coffee break. There are a lot of advantages that we now have where we can. I know word focus is very important to you and your counseling. We can focus now without all those interruptions. I've written articles and I've talked about the workplace chatterboxes, and those things are they have their place, and the social part. Many people miss the social part, and yet when you go to productivity, if a person has the discipline, the boundaries, both of place and time that you're talking about, they can be surprisingly much more productive. And this is going to be a surprise to many people who come from an old school of management. And one of the things I've said, and I'm sure you realize it too, is many managers have said, well, we can't trust people when they're not working right here. And my comment would be, you can't trust them then if they're working anywhere, because if a person is 50 feet from you and working, you still may not trust them. So trust is an issue that we need to develop. One more question, and that is, during the last 15 or 16 months, there have been vast job losses. This has demoralized many capable people. It has also frightened them economically. I'm sure that you have counseled people who come to you having lost a job and worrying about their career, their future, their family, their economic stability, their health care, their retirement. What have you said to people like that? What do you do to help them when they're in that frightening situation, Dawn?
The truth of it is, Dr. Bill, a lot of times when a person loses a job, unfortunately, affording therapy is not always an option. And oftentimes it may not be something that they feel they can do. And that's why a lot of times we try to online, having blogs, articles. I often tell people when they come in for therapy and we go through the informed consent, since this is licensed mental health, and we say there's information out there on our website, we have a presence on social media, but we don't provide any form of therapy through those things. We say to them, that's there to promote, that it's to destigmatize getting help. It's there to promote positive mental health and to encourage people to make positive change wherever they find and get that help. We just don't provide therapy through that forum. We provide therapy through an informed consent and either encrypted video or through other forms of HIPAA compliant platforms or in person. And I think that when people have lost a job, sometimes it's about, I'd even made a note because you and I talked a little about this. We look at a lot of times, first of all, I think the nature of this particular challenge has been people saying this is short term. So they've kind of been holding on to some hope that things will return to some semblance of normal. And then as it went on, stress began to look a little bit different. But the other thing is we look at, one of the things we do is reality, like what does reality say we need to do about a job? But then I kind of go, okay, do you want to do a reset at this point in your life? Is it time to look at something different? Do you want to do the same thing? Do you want to do something completely different? Do you want to change? And that doesn't always require a complete set of skills. You don't have to go back to college for it. But sometimes that in the past that's meant that. But it can also look at self-education. What do you want to get? Do you need new skills? Do you need technical stuff? What are we looking at, right? And then that reset. Okay, let's look at a reset. And what other changes might we need to make? Do you need to make? What's going to be realistic? What's going to be possible? What's going to be acceptable to that client that's having to deal with that issue? And then the biggest issue too, when you're dealing with that very realistic hardship, is what's their support system look like, and what does that do for them, and how does that fit into their plan? Because that's going to be critical ultimately.
Yes, don't try to do it entirely on your own. Don, we're going to end on a lighter note. We've talked about some rather heavy, serious stuff here. On a lighter note, I was having lunch just the other day with one of my longtime golf buddies, and he told me something that I hadn't heard, but I imagine you're aware of it. You and I, Dawn, are very ardent pet lovers. We just they're definitely family to us. And this golfing buddy of mine was telling me that because of the isolation people have, the sale of pets has just skyrocketed because people want that extra comfort and companionship. Have you noticed that?
Pets are they're actually used in the therapeutic world now a lot more than they were even 15 years ago, but certainly more than 20 or 30 years ago. Equine therapy with horses was one of the first areas to be in evidence-based. But I used to show when I taught psychology, I got the most profound response from my students when I would show clips that included it was amazing, the evidence-based results that some researchers got in nursing homes. And I'm not talking just dogs and cats. I'm talking bunnies and ducks and ferrets and birds, and every possible imaginable animal you could think of. And this is in an environment that's normally supposed to be highly sterile. And in the clip I would show, my students would get so engaged. We would have it was the warmest, fuzziest lecture you could ever give. And the students would be so involved, and everybody smiling and laughing and totally interested in what these research results would show, because the death rate dropped when they brought in all these supposedly dirty animals, and medication increases and needs for medication dropped, while mortality also dropped. So people live longer with less medication the minute they brought in all these animals. It was incredible. So absolutely wanting to go for pets. And I myself have had clients absolutely talk about the importance of their pets. My pet, sometimes he's a therapy animal at time he goes in. And I've had clients who sometimes have hit the door, and before they say hello to me, they want to know where my pet is. Where is Skipper, and is he going to be here today?
That's why I brought that up, because it is so therapeutic, and it is so healing. And of course, anybody who has been hospitalized in the last several years, there are often volunteers there with therapy dogs who are trained to let people pet them and be friendly with them, and that's a grand part of the healing process. Dawn, I know that those who are watching and listening will want your contact information. This has been fascinating information, very helpful. Appreciate it so much. So please give us your contact information.
All right. The practice is dawningphoenix.com. We have a website, dawningphoenix.com. And the telephone number is 678-965-9591.
Thank you, Dawn. And I do encourage people to get in touch with Dawn, a wonderful resource. And since Dawn has given her contact information, I'm happy to give mine. The Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there, check my services for corporations and leaders. Give me a call. Let's talk about your communication challenges and problems and how I can help you find solutions to them. Dawn Echols, thank you again so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thanks to those of you who joined us. Be with us again next week for another very beneficial edition of the Biz Communication Corner, the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton.